My name is Thrrell. Guard Captain Thrrell, thank you very much. 4 arms, excellent peripheral vision, and a reputation for running the tightest security detail in the entire Andromeda educational sector. Students feared me. Faculty respected me. The dean himself had commended my work on maintaining order among, and I quote, the most chaotic collection of young sentience this side of the Milky Way. So when that human girl came strolling in 43 minutes late to morning assembly, I noticed. How could I not? She was the only Deathworlder in a school of 2,000 students. Maya Torres, the scholarship case from Earth, the charity project. The administrators loved patting themselves on the back for their inclusivity, but let us be real here. Nobody actually wanted her around. She was not even rushing. Just walking down that corridor like she had all the time in the universe, her primitive cloth bag slung over one shoulder, those strange forward-facing predator eyes looking straight ahead, not down, not apologetic, just walking. I stepped into her path. All 4 of my arms crossed over my chest in the universal gesture of authority. My crest flared up, the way it does when I need to remind someone who is in charge. You, I said, my voice echoing off the crystalline walls. Assembly started 43 minutes ago. Care to explain yourself, human? She stopped, looked at me with those weird binocular eyes. Brown, I think the color was called, flat, emotionless. My transport pod malfunctioned, she said simply. No honorifics. No, sir. Just a flat statement of fact. Transport pod malfunctioned, I repeated, letting sarcasm drip from every syllable. How remarkably convenient. 3rd time this month, is it not? Something flickered across her face then, her jaw, that strange hinged bone structure they have tightened slightly. The pod system is not designed for Earth gravity species, she said, and I could hear the strain in her voice now. The compensation algorithms keep failing. I have filed reports with maintenance 7 times, but nothing, I interrupted. I was done with excuses. Done with special treatment. Done with this Deathworld primitive thinking she could sass a superior officer. You will learn respect, or you will learn the consequences. That is when I did it. I raised my primary right hand and slapped her across the face. Not hard by my species standards. Just a corrective tap. The kind of thing we do to unruly younglings all the time. A reminder of hierarchy. A reset of attitude. The sound echoed in the corridor. Sharp. Final. For maybe 2 seconds nothing happened. She just stood there, her head turned slightly from the impact, one hand slowly rising to touch her reddening cheek. I felt satisfied, problem solved. Lesson taught. Then she turned her head back to face me and I saw it happen. Her eyes, those brown predator eyes, they changed. The color just drained away. Started at the pupils and spread outward like ink in water. Black. Completely, utterly, horrifyingly black. Not just the pupils. Everything. The whites, the irises, all of it. Drowning in darkness. Her breathing changed too. Slower. Deeper. I could hear it now, the way her chest expanded and contracted with deliberate, measured breaths. And then, ancestors helped me. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not even an angry smile. Something else entirely. Something that made every single one of my survival instincts start screaming at once. That, she said, her voice dropping to something barely above a whisper, was a mistake, Guard Captain. I remember thinking, in that moment of pure crystalline terror, that I had made a very, very poor choice. Let me back up here, because you need to understand something about Celestial Academy, about me, and about why I thought slapping a human was just another day at the office. Celestial Academy is not just any school. We are talking about the most prestigious interstellar educational institution in 17 sectors. The children of ambassadors study here, future planetary governors, corporate heirs whose families control entire star systems. This place does not accept just anybody. You need connections, credits, or both. Lots of both. I got my position here because I am good at what I do. Maintaining order is not just about physical presence. It is about understanding the social dynamics, the hierarchies. Every species has them, and every species respects strength when they see it. My species, the Cravathi, we are known for our discipline. Our 4 arms make us excellent at restraint techniques. Our crest displays make it clear when we mean business. In 17 cycles I had never had a student successfully challenge my authority. Not once. The whole Deathworlder thing. Yeah, that was part of my calculation too. See, humans are from Earth, right? Category 9 Deathworld. Extreme gravity, aggressive predators, constant environmental threats. The world. Everyone in the galaxy knows this. Everyone also knows that Deathworlders are, well, let us just say they are not exactly celebrated in polite society. Sure, humans are strong. Sure, they have endurance that seems almost impossible. But they are also primitive, emotional, unstable. They still have not figured out proper psionic communication. They literally make vibrating air sounds at each other to convey information. How barbaric is that? Most species keep Deathworlders at arm's length. Trade with them, sure. Employ them for dangerous manual labor, absolutely. But educate them alongside proper civilized species. The idea makes most people's sensory organs twitch with discomfort. Maya Torres got into Celestial Academy through some kind of cultural exchange program. The dean loved talking about it at faculty meetings, bridging the gap between civilized space and the frontier worlds. He would say, his voice organs pulsing with self-satisfaction. We are pioneers in interspecies education. What he never mentioned was that Maya was here alone. The only human, the only Deathworlder. No support system. No species-specific accommodations beyond the bare legal minimum. She attended classes designed for species with completely different biologies, ate in a cafeteria where the food was barely digestible for her chemistry, and slept in dormitories where the temperature was kept at what we considered comfortable and what probably felt like a freezer to her warm-blooded system. I had seen her around campus plenty of times before that morning. Always alone. Always quiet. Head down, moving from class to class without making trouble. The other students avoided her, which was fine by me. Less drama to deal with. There had been incidents, of course. Someone had scratched Deathworld trash into her locker door in 3 different languages. Her assignments had mysteriously disappeared from the submission servers twice. I had broken up a confrontation once where 5 Tellari students had cornered her in the recreation hall, making comments about her species' eating habits. But Maya never reported anything. Never made a fuss. Just took it all with that same flat expression I saw every day. I figured she understood her place here. Knew she was a charity case. An experiment, not a real student. I thought that made her weak. I thought her silence was submission. Ancestors, forgive me. I could not have been more wrong about anything in my entire life. Standing there in corridor 7, watching her eyes turn that impossible black, feeling that primal terror crawl up my spine, I suddenly understood something that every other species in the galaxy had apparently figured out except me. When a Deathworld predator goes quiet, it is not because they are weak. It is because they are calculating, waiting, choosing their moment. And I, in my arrogance and my 17 cycles of unchallenged authority, had just given Maya Torres her moment. The first thing I noticed after the eyes was the way she stopped blinking. Just stopped. Those pitch-black orbs locked onto me with the kind of focus that prey animals must feel right before they die. I have 2 eyes on each side of my head, 4 total, giving me nearly 300-degree vision. Right then, I would have traded all 4 of them to not have to look at her. Her shoulders rolled back and I heard something pop in her skeletal structure. Not a crack like breaking. No, this was deliberate. Joints settling into position. Her stance widened slightly, weight distributing in a way that looked wrong. Predator. Her knees bent just a fraction, and suddenly she looked coiled, ready to spring. "Guard, Captain Thrrell," she said again, and her voice had changed too. Deeper, rougher, like she was forcing words through a throat that wanted to be doing something else entirely. "Do you know what happens when you strike a human?" I tried to respond. Really, I did. My mouth opened. My voice organ vibrated. Nothing came out except a sound that might have been a whimper. 4 arms, military training, 17 cycles of experience, and I was frozen like a first-year cadet facing their instructor. The temperature in the corridor felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. Or maybe that was just me. My crest, which had been flared in authority moments ago, was now plastered flat against my skull in pure instinctive terror. Behind Maya, I could see other students starting to gather. A cluster of Pelaxian younglings backed against the far wall, their fur standing on end. 2 Valorian twins clutching each other, their gill slits fluttering rapidly. Even a Kragath, a species literally bred for combat, was slowly edging toward the nearest exit. Our bodies, Maya continued, taking 1 step closer to me, have this fascinating little survival mechanism. Been around for millions of years. helped our ancestors survive on a planet that was actively trying to kill them every single day. Another step. It is called the adrenaline response. I stumbled backward. All 4 of my arms came up in a warding gesture, but they were shaking. Actually shaking. When had I started shaking? When a human perceives a threat, our adrenal glands release a cocktail of hormones. Adrenaline, cortisol, noradrenaline. Our heart rate increases. Blood flow redirects to major muscle groups. She tilted her head at an angle that no civilized species would find natural. Our pupils dilate to maximum aperture. That is what you are seeing right now, by the way. Maximum dilation. Every photon of light getting sucked in. The black eyes. Oh, ancestors. The black eyes were not some kind of attack mode or battle rage. They were just biology. Extreme biology that looked like something out of a nightmare. Our pain tolerance increases by approximately 300%. Maya continued, her voice never rising above that terrible calm whisper. Our strength output jumps by 40 to 50%. Reaction time gets cut in half. Blood clotting factors activate preemptively in case of injury. She was close enough now that I could smell her. Humans have this scent, sort of metallic and warm, and right now it was overwhelming. Aggressive. My species has excellent olfactory senses, and every single molecule I was breathing in was screaming predator, predator, predator. All of this happens automatically, she said. No conscious thought required. You slapped me, guard captain. You made me perceive you as a threat. And now my body is ready to eliminate that threat by any means necessary. I did not. I finally managed to stammer out. It was just a corrective. We do it all the time to younglings. It is normal. It is. I am not one of your younglings, Maya interrupted. And for the first time I heard actual emotion in her voice. Anger. Cold, controlled, terrifying anger. I am a human. From Earth. Do you know what we did to the other apex predators on our planet? Guard captain. I did not answer. Could not answer. We hunted them, she said. All of them. We hunted them until they learned to fear the sight of us. Until they changed their migration patterns to avoid us. Until some of them went extinct because they could not adapt fast enough to the presence of human beings in their territory. One of the Pelaxian younglings behind her made a small crying sound. The Valorian twins had their communication membranes sealed shut in terror. The Kragath was gone, having apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor. And do you know what the really scary part is? Maya leaned in close enough that I could see the individual pores on her skin, the way her jaw muscles were clenched tight. The slight flare of her nostrils with each breath. This is me holding back. This is me using every bit of civilized training and self-control I have developed. Because if I actually let this adrenaline response do what millions of years of evolution designed it to do, she paused. Smiled that horrible smile again. You would already be unconscious on the floor, and I would be explaining to station security why a guard captain needed medical intervention. The corridor alarm started blaring then. Someone had finally hit the emergency alert. Red lights flashed along the crystalline walls. I could hear the heavy footfalls of the security response team coming down the adjacent hallway, but I could not take my eyes off Maya. Could not move. Could not think beyond the single overwhelming realization that I had just physically assaulted something that evolution had spent millions of years turning into a perfect killer. And she was letting me live. The security team burst into Corridor 7 with all the grace of a cargo hauler making an emergency landing. 6 officers, all Kravathi like me, armed with stun batons and riot shields. Protocol. For a code red threat situation, Lieutenant Vexen was leading them, his crest fully extended, all 4 arms holding equipment. Freeze, he barked. The standard command. All students against the wall, security personnel will. His voice trailed off as he actually looked at the scene. Looked at me, backed against the wall, all 4 of my arms up in surrender. Looked at Maya standing in the center of the corridor, those black eyes now tracking each new arrival with mechanical precision. Looked at the dozen other students pressed against the far walls, some of them crying, all of them terrified. Thrrell, Vexen said, confusion replacing command in his tone. What is? What happened to her eyes? Do not, I managed to croak out. Do not threaten her, do not touch her. Just do not. Maya turned her head slowly to look at Vexen. That same predator focus locked onto a new target. I saw him take an involuntary step back, even with 5 other officers behind him. I am going to speak now, Maya said, her voice still carrying that unnatural calm. You are going to listen, and then we are going to discuss what happens next. Is that acceptable, Lieutenant? Vexen looked at me, looked at Maya, looked at his team. I could see him doing the math, the threat assessment. 6 trained security officers with weapons versus 1 teenage human girl. Should have been no contest. Except his instincts, those same survival instincts that had kept our species alive for millennia, were telling him the same thing mine were screaming. Back away. Avoid confrontation. This is not a fight you want. Speak, he said carefully, lowering his primary stun baton slightly. Maya took a breath. I watched her chest expand, hold, then release slowly. Some kind of calming technique, maybe. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of that predatory edge. Not all of it. But 43 minutes ago I was in sub-level 3, she began. In the maintenance tunnel access corridor. I was not supposed to be there. I know this. But I had a reason. She paused, and for the first time since the slap, I saw something other than rage in her expression. Something that looked almost like guilt? Shame? There is a student here, Pip. Small. Quadrupedal. Crystalline-based biology. First year like me. Pip is from Tessara 9, which is a low-gravity world. High atmosphere. Pip is delicate. Several of the watching students shifted uncomfortably at that name. I saw the Valorian twins exchange a glance. The Palexian's fur rippled in what I recognized as their equivalent of a nervous gesture. For the past 6 weeks, Maya continued, her voice getting harder again, a group of students has been tormenting Pip. Shoving. Tripping. Hiding Pip's class materials. Yesterday they locked Pip in a storage container. Pip was in there for 3 hours before someone heard the distress calls. My secondary heart skipped a beat. Storage containers were climate-controlled for standard atmosphere species. For a high-atmosphere crystalline being, 3 hours in one would be like slow suffocation. I found out because Pip told me, Maya said. Pip is the only other student in this entire academy who talks to me, who sits near me in the dining hall, who does not act like I am some kind of disease vector just because I come from a Deathworld. She looked directly at me then, and I felt my crest try to flatten even further against my skull. This morning those same students cornered Pip again, in sub-level 3. They were threatening to crack one of Pip's limbs. For fun, for entertainment. The corridor had gone completely silent, except for the low alarm still pulsing. Even that seemed quieter now, like the station itself was holding its breath. I intervened, Maya said simply. I got between them and Pip. I did not hit anyone, did not threaten anyone. Just stood there and asked them to stop. They laughed at me, called me Deathworld scum, said I should go back to my primitive planet and leave civilized species alone. Her hands, I noticed, were clenched into fists now. Those strange 5-fingered appendages, white-knuckled with tension. But they left. Because even bullies have enough survival instinct to not push a cornered human too far. I stayed with Pip until Pip was calm enough to get to class. That is why I was late. That is why my uniform is dirty. That is why I did not make it to morning assembly. She turned back to Vexen and I saw his grip tighten on his stun baton reflexively. I was going to report it, she said. I was going to file a formal complaint with administration. I was going to follow proper channels and procedures, and all the civilized protocols you people love so much. The way she said you people carried so much weight it might as well have been a physical blow. But then Guard Captain Thrrell decided that my explanation was not worth hearing. That I needed to learn respect. That the appropriate response to a student arriving late was physical violence. She took 3 steps toward me. I tried to make myself smaller against the wall, which is really hard to do when you have 4 arms and a crest. So let me explain something to all of you, Maya said, her voice rising for the first time. Not shouting, but definitely not that calm whisper anymore. On Earth, hitting someone without provocation is called assault. It is a crime. It does not matter if you are bigger. It does not matter if you have authority. It does not matter if you think you are teaching a lesson. Her black eyes swept across everyone in the corridor. Students. Security officers. Me. You do not get to put your hands on another sentient being just because you feel like it. You do not get to use force just because someone is late. Or different. Or from a species you consider beneath you. One of her hands came up, fingers touching the red mark on her cheek where I had hit her. It was already starting to bruise, That strange purple-blue color human skin turns when damaged. This is assault, she said quietly, and every single one of you is a witness. Lieutenant Vexen was the first to speak after several seconds of heavy silence. The security cameras, he said slowly. They record everything in the main corridors. Maya smiled. Not the predator smile from before. Something different. Satisfied. Yes, she said. They do. And that was when I realized, standing there with my back against the wall and my career flashing before my 4 eyes, that I was completely and totally screwed. The sound of expensive shoes on crystalline flooring announced Dean Velcor before we actually saw him. That distinctive click, click, click that his species makes when they are moving fast, their lower manipulator limbs hitting the ground in rapid succession. He swept into Corridor 7 with his entourage, 3 administrative assistants and the head of student affairs, all of them looking various shades of alarmed. Dean Velcor is a Sorvithian. Long, elegant body. 12 limbs total. 6 for locomotion and 6 for manipulation. Skin that shifts colors based on emotional state. Right now, he was cycling through a rapid pattern of orange and purple, which in Sorvithian body language translates roughly to extreme agitation mixed with bureaucratic panic. What in the name of the Galactic Council is going on here? His voice came out in that multitonal harmonic way his species does, 3 different pitches at once. Usually soothing. Right now, shrill with stress. Lieutenant Vexen. Report. Why is there a code red active? Why are students? Oh no. He had seen Maya. Seen her eyes. His color pattern shifted immediately to solid gray, the Sorvathian equivalent of pure shock. Her eyes, one of his assistants whispered. What is wrong with her eyes? Adrenaline response, Lieutenant Vexen said before I could speak. He had clearly been paying attention during Maya's explanation. The human is experiencing a defensive biological reaction. Defensive, Dean Velcor repeated, his attention snapping to me. 4 of his manipulator limbs pointed directly at my face. Guard Captain Thrrell. What did you do? I opened my mouth, closed it. My voice organ felt like it had sealed shut. How do you explain to your superior that you just committed what was probably an interstellar diplomatic incident? He hit me, Maya said flatly, saving me the trouble. Her hand was still touching her bruised cheek. 43 minutes late to assembly. He did not ask why, did not want to hear my explanation. Just decided that the appropriate response was to slap me across the face. The dean's color went from gray to a deep dark blue. That one I knew. That was anger. Serious anger. You struck a student? His voice dropped to a single tone now, low and dangerous. All 3 pitches synchronized, which only happens when a Sorvathian is absolutely furious. You physically assaulted a juvenile sentient under the Academy's protection. It was a corrective measure, I said weakly. Standard disciplinary, we use it for unruly younglings all the time. It is accepted practice in Cravathi child rearing. The head of student affairs cut in. She was a Pelaxian, older, with silver streaks in her fur, which has exactly 0 relevance to interspecies educational protocols. Did you read any at all of the species-specific guidelines in your training materials, Guard Captain? I had not. Of course I had not. Who reads those things? Thousands of pages of bureaucratic nonsense about cultural sensitivity and biological differences and proper contact protocols. I had skimmed the summary. That was enough. That had always been enough. Humans, she continued, her voice tight with barely controlled frustration, are classified as a full contact species for consensual interaction. Sports, greetings, social bonding, but non-consensual physical contact, especially from authority figures, especially of a punitive nature, triggers extreme defensive responses. It is literally in the first paragraph of their species profile. She pulled out a datapad, manipulated it with quick, angry gestures, then turned it toward me. I saw the text, official Galactic Council formatting, human species designation, and right there at the top in bold text, do not strike or physically intimidate. High aggression response probability. Legal ramifications under Interspecies Conduct Law Section 47.3. Oh, I said quietly. Then, because the situation could not possibly get worse, I added, I did not know. You did not know, Dean Velcor repeated. His color had shifted to a splotchy mix of blue and red now. You assaulted a student from a species with diplomatic protection status. You triggered a biological threat response that could have resulted in serious injury. You created a code red situation that has now been logged in the Central Security Database. And your defense is that you did not know. When he put it like that, it sounded really bad. Lieutenant Vexen, the dean said, turning away from me like I was no longer worth looking at. Access the security footage from Corridor 7. I want timestamps, angles, audio if available. Full documentation package. Vexen was already working his datapad. His face, or what passes for facial expressions in our species, grew increasingly grim as he reviewed the footage. Footage is clear, he said after a moment. Student Torres approaches. Guard Captain Thrrell blocks her path. Verbal exchange. Student attempts to explain. Guard Captain interrupts, then delivers an open-hand strike to the facial region. Student remains stationary. Biological response begins approximately 2.3 seconds after impact. He looked up from the pad, looked at me, and I saw something in his expression I had never seen directed at me before. There is also footage from Sub-Level 3, he continued, timestamped to 47 minutes before this incident. Student Torres is shown intervening in what appears to be a physical confrontation between 5 students and a smaller Tesseran student. No violence from Torres. She simply positions herself as a physical barrier. The other students withdraw after approximately 30 seconds. Dean Velkor's color pattern shifted again. Lighter blue now. Thoughtful blue. So she was late because she was protecting another student, he said slowly. From bullying, from potential physical harm. And your response, Guard Captain, was to physically assault her without asking for any context whatsoever. Yes, I admitted. There was no point denying it. The footage existed. The witnesses existed. The bruise on Maya's face existed. Galactic Council Regulation 47 Section 3, the head of Student Affairs said, reading from her own datapad now. Regarding physical contact between authority figures and protected class juveniles, any non-consensual physical contact of a punitive or aggressive nature is classified as assault. Penalties range from immediate termination of employment to criminal prosecution, depending on severity and species-specific factors. She looked at Maya, whose eyes were, I suddenly noticed, starting to return to normal. The black was receding, brown creeping back in from the edges. Her breathing had slowed. Her stance had relaxed slightly. Human biology adds an additional complication, the head of Student Affairs continued, because the adrenaline response can be legally classified as a self-defense activation, which means Student Torres would have been within her rights to respond with physical force. Everyone turned to look at Maya again. She met their gazes steadily, her eyes now maybe 60% back to normal. Still unsettling, but not nightmare fuel anymore. I did not hit him, she said quietly. I wanted to. Every single molecule of adrenaline in my system was screaming at me to eliminate the threat, but I did not. Because despite what people in this academy seem to think about Deathworlders, we are capable of self-control. The silence that followed that statement was extremely uncomfortable. I saw several of the watching students look away, guilt written clearly in their body language. Dean Velkor's color settled into a solid, professional green. Decision made. Guard Captain Thrrell, he said formally. You are hereby suspended from duty pending a full administrative review. Surrender your security credentials and equipment to Lieutenant Vexen immediately. My world collapsed into a very small, very focused point. 17 cycles. 17 cycles of perfect service, of maintaining order, of doing my job. Gone. Just like that. Dean Velkor, please. I can explain, it was a misunderstanding. I did not mean. You did not mean to assault a student. His voice went multitonal again, cutting and cold. You accidentally struck her? Your hand accidentally made contact with her face with sufficient force to leave visible bruising. I had no answer to that. No defense. 'Cause he was right. I had meant it. In that moment, I had absolutely meant to hit her. I just had not meant for there to be consequences. Removing my security credentials felt like having limbs amputated. The badge that granted me access to every corridor, every office, every restricted zone in the academy. The communicator that linked me to the security network. The command codes that let me override locks and activate emergency protocols. All of it stripped away and handed to Lieutenant Vexen, who accepted each item without meeting my eyes. The students were still watching. Of course they were watching. This was probably the most exciting thing that had happened at Celestial Academy in years. I could already imagine the messages flying across the student network, the recordings being shared, the commentary and speculation spreading through the campus like radiation through a hull breach. Maya's eyes were almost completely normal now. Maybe 85%. Just a slightly larger pupil than baseline. A faint shadow of darkness around the edges. She was breathing normally, standing normally, looking almost like any other student except for the growing bruise on her cheek and the careful distance everyone was maintaining from her. "Student Torres," Dean Velcor said, his tone shifting to something gentler, concerned. The tone administrators use when they are worried about lawsuits. "Do you require medical attention?" The health center. "I am fine," Maya interrupted. Not rudely, just stating a fact. The bruising will heal on its own within a week. Humans are durable that way. Nevertheless, I insist on a full medical evaluation. For documentation purposes, if nothing else. The dean gestured to one of his assistants who immediately started tapping at a datapad. "And I believe we need to have a much longer conversation about your experience at this academy. About the incident in sub-level 3. About other things that may have occurred that you have not reported." Something flickered across Maya's face. Surprise, maybe. Like she had expected a cover-up, expected to be blamed somehow, and was having trouble processing actual administrative concern. "There have been other incidents," she admitted slowly. "Vandalism, theft of assignments, verbal harassment. A few physical confrontations that I diffused before they escalated. They did not report them because..." She stopped, looked at me, looked at the other security officers, looked at the students still pressed against the wall. "Because I did not think anyone would care," she finished quietly. "I am the charity case. The Deathworld experiment. The thing you all tolerate because it looks good in the academy promotional materials. I did not think my complaints would matter." The head of student affairs made a sound that might have been a sigh or might have been a Palaxian curse. "Hard to tell sometimes." "Student Torres, I want to be very clear about something," she said, moving closer but stopping at a respectful distance. Maya's eyes tracked the movement with that predator focus, even mostly back to normal. "What you just described is not acceptable, has never been acceptable, should never have been tolerated by anyone in a position of authority." She turned to glare at me specifically. I tried to make myself even smaller. "The fact that you felt unable to report these incidents represents a catastrophic failure of our duty of care," she continued, "and I assure you there will be a comprehensive investigation into every single event you mentioned. Starting with the sub-level 3 incident," Dean Velcor added. "Lieutenant Vexen, I want full identity confirmation on the 5 students involved. I want their disciplinary records pulled. I want statements from student Pip, was it?" "Pip," Maya confirmed. "Room 317 in the first-year dormitory. I want a statement from Pip as well," the dean said. "And I want a campus-wide review of our anti-bullying protocols. Clearly they are not working." One of the Valorian twins still pressed against the far wall made a small sound. Not quite a sob, more like a gasp of held breath suddenly released. "You," the head of student affairs said, pointing at the twins. "Do you have information relevant to this situation?" The twins looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. That twin thing that happens with bonded siblings across half the species in the galaxy. "We saw things," one of them said finally. Their voice was barely above a whisper, their gill slits fluttering with nervousness. "Other things. With Maya, with Pip, with some of the smaller students. We did not say anything," the other twin added. "We were afraid. The students doing it, they are all from important families. Connected families. We thought if we reported them we would become targets too." Dean Velcor's color went through a rapid cascade of emotions. Orange agitation, red anger, purple distress, finally settling on a sort of muddy brown that I recognized as shame. "This academy," he said slowly, each word carefully measured, "was founded on the principle that all sentient species deserve access to quality education, regardless of origin, regardless of social status, regardless of whether they come from a garden world, or a death world, or anywhere in between." He looked around the corridor, making eye contact with every student, every security officer, every member of his administrative team. "We have failed that principle," he continued. "We have allowed a culture of intimidation and prejudice to flourish. We have looked the other way when students were victimized. We have, and I include myself in this, we have prioritized reputation and donor relations over the safety and well-being of the juveniles in our care." It was quite a speech. Very heartfelt, very administrative. The kind of thing that sounds great and looks even better in official reports. But Maya, she just looked tired. The adrenaline was fully worn off now, I could tell. Her shoulders had slumped slightly. Her eyes were completely normal brown again. She looked like what she actually was, a teenager far from home, dealing with problems no teenager should have to handle alone. "Can I go to class now?" she asked. "I have quantum mathematics in 15 minutes. Professor Keltrax gives penalty marks for tardiness." The dean blinked. All his assistants blinked. Even Lieutenant Vexeds looked surprised. You want to go to class?" the dean said. "After everything that just happened?" "Student Torres, I think perhaps taking the rest of the day to recover would be." "I did not come to Celestial Academy to take days off," Maya said, and there was steel in her voice now. Different steel than the predator tone from before. This was determination. Stubbornness. "I came here to learn. I earned my scholarship. I belong here just as much as anyone else, and I am not going to let this make me hide." She looked directly at me then. Not with anger. Not with fear. Just with a flat, evaluating stare that somehow felt worse than the black-eyed predator look. "Guard Captain Thrrell made a mistake," she said. "A bad mistake. But he does not get to chase me out of this academy. Nobody does. I am staying. I am going to class. I am going to finish my education. And I am going to prove that Deathworlders belong in civilized space just as much as anyone else." And then, without waiting for permission or dismissal or any of the proper protocols, Maya Torres picked up her bag, turned on her heel and walked away down the corridor. Every single person watched her go. Nobody tried to stop her. Nobody said a word. When she turned the corner and disappeared from view, Dean Velcor made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a groan. "Lieutenant Vexen," he said wearily. "Assign 2 officers to discreet monitoring of Student Torres. Not surveillance. Protection. I want to know if anyone so much as looks at her wrong for the next week." "Understood, sir." "And someone get Student Pip to a counselor, and identify those 5 students, and pull the complete security archives for the past 6 weeks. He paused, his color shifting to a pale, exhausted yellow. "And someone explain to me how we let things get this bad without noticing." Nobody had an answer for that. Including me. Especially me. I stood there, credentialless, stripped of authority, watching my career burn down around me, and all I could think about was the look in Maya's eyes right before she walked away. Not the black predator eyes. Not the threat response. The other look. The human look. The one that said she had judged me and found me lacking and had already dismissed me as irrelevant to her life. Somehow that was worse than the terror had been. The administrative review took 6 days. 6 days of sitting in my quarters, not allowed on campus, not allowed to communicate with other security personnel, just waiting while a panel of bureaucrats decided my fate. They interviewed everyone. Students, faculty, other guards. They pulled footage from every camera in the academy for the past 2 months. They brought in specialists in interspecies law and human biology and workplace conduct. The report, when it finally came, was 97 pages long. I only needed to read the first 3 to know I was finished. Guard Captain Thrrell demonstrated a pattern of excessive force and species-based prejudice in his conduct, the summary stated. Clinical language for what everyone knew was the truth. I was a bully. I had been a bully for 17 cycles. I had just been bullying species that were even more afraid to report me than Maya had been. They found 8 other incidents. Students I had shoved. Younglings I had intimidated. A Tesserand student different from Pip but same species, who I had locked in a storage room for 2 hours as punishment for running in the corridors. That one made me feel physically sick when I read it. 2 hours in an environment that was slowly suffocating them, and I had just forgotten. Gone on my patrol and forgotten they were in there until another guard found them. The ruling was unanimous. Immediate termination. Permanent ban from employment at any Galactic Council educational facility. Criminal charges filed for assault under interspecies conduct law. Mandatory counseling for species sensitivity awareness. 6 months minimum. Financial penalties for emotional damages to Student Torres. My career was not just over, it was erased. Like it had never existed. The worst part, the absolute worst part, was that they made me watch the full security footage. Not just from Corridor 7. From everywhere. Weeks and weeks of it. Me shoving students. Me using my size to intimidate. Me treating anyone I considered lesser with contempt and cruelty. And Maya. They showed me all the footage of Maya. Her sitting alone in the dining hall, 3 empty tables surrounding her while other students deliberately avoided her section. Her in the library trying to study while a group of students whispered loud enough for her to hear. Deathworld trash, primitive savage. Why is she even here? Her walking past her vandalized locker for the 4th time without reporting it, just quietly cleaning off the slurs with a cloth she kept in her bag for exactly that purpose. Her finding Pip locked in that storage container, prying open the emergency release with her bare hands, the metal actually denting under her grip, carrying Pip to the health center, speaking in soft, soothing tones the whole way, staying there for 3 hours until Pip was stabilized, missing 2 classes and a mandatory assembly. Nobody had helped her. Not one person. She had been protecting the vulnerable, standing up to bullies, being the kind of person everyone claims they want students to become. And the response from authority, from me, had been to hit her in the face. The footage showed her after I struck her too. The transformation I had witnessed up close, but seeing it from the external cameras gave it a different perspective. You could see the exact moment her biology took over. The pupil dilation spreading like spilled ink, the shift in her stance, the way every muscle in her body tensed for violence that never came. And you could see how hard she was fighting it. Her hands clenching and unclenching, her jaw working, the way she kept taking those deep measured breaths, forcing her system to calm down through sheer willpower. The human biology consultant they brought in pointed it out during the review hearing. "What you are witnessing is extraordinary self-control," she said. She was human too, older, with gray in her hair and lines around her eyes. Dr. Rachel Okonkwo, the datapad, identified her. Professor of Xenobiology at the Titan Institute. Student Torres as a juvenile. Her prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and rational decision-making, is not fully developed. It will not be fully developed for another 7 to 8 years. And yet, despite a massive adrenaline surge, despite a threat response that evolution has been refining for millions of years, despite being hit by an authority figure while alone and unsupported in a hostile environment, she did not strike back. Dr. Okonkwo looked directly at me during that statement. Her eyes, normal human brown with normal human pupils, somehow felt more judgmental than Maya's black ones had. Adult humans with full neurological development struggle with that level of restraint, she continued. The fact that a 17-year-old girl managed it speaks to either exceptional personal character or, more likely, extensive prior experience in suppressing her natural defensive responses to avoid retaliation. The way she said that last part made my secondary heart hurt. Extensive prior experience, meaning Maya had been hit before, had learned not to fight back, had developed that terrifying self-control because the alternative was worse. What kind of academy had we been running where a student needed that skill set to survive? The criminal charges were reduced to a fine and probation, mostly because Maya herself argued against jail time. She submitted a written statement to the court. Guard Captain Thrrell acted out of ignorance, not malice, she wrote. Professional language carefully constructed, probably reviewed by legal counsel. He has lost his career and his reputation. Further punishment serves no rehabilitative purpose. I would prefer that he be required to undergo extensive species sensitivity training and be prohibited from positions of authority over juveniles. Let him be an example of what not to do, rather than simply a cautionary tale about consequences. She was more merciful than I deserved. Everyone knew it. I knew it. The Galactic Council news networks picked up the story within days. You could not avoid it. Every feed, every channel, every social media platform was showing the footage, discussing it, analyzing it, arguing about it. The human community response was particularly intense. Millions of messages flooded in from Earth, from the various human colonies, from human embassies across civilized space. Some demanded harsher penalties. Some praised Maya's restraint. Some used the incident as proof that humans should not be integrated into multi-species environments. But most of them just asked why a student had been in that position in the first place. Why she had been alone. Why there were no species-specific support systems. Why the academy had accepted a human student without proper preparation for her unique needs. Those were good questions. Questions that made Dean Valcor's color pattern shift to uncomfortable purple every time they came up in press conferences. The Academy's response was comprehensive. They fired 3 more security officers whose records showed similar patterns to mine. They hired a dedicated human counselor. They implemented mandatory species sensitivity training for all staff. They established a confidential reporting system for bullying and harassment. They expelled 4 of the 5 students who had cornered Pip. The 5th was a first-time offender and got probation plus mandatory counseling. Their families screamed about unfair treatment and political correctness run amok. Nobody cared. The footage of them threatening to break a Tesseract student's limbs for entertainment did not generate much sympathy. And Maya, she became famous. Not celebrity famous, more like symbol famous. The human girl with black eyes who had stared down Academy security and won, who had protected the weak and refused to be driven away, who had shown more restraint under assault than most trained diplomats manage intense negotiations. She gave exactly one interview to a small independent journalist who approached her respectfully and waited until she was ready. "I did not want to be famous," she said in the recording. Her voice was tired. "I just wanted to go to school, to learn, to maybe make a few friends, to prove that humans can succeed in academic environments, just like anyone else." The journalist asked if she regretted coming to Celestial Academy, if she wished she had stayed on Earth where she would have been surrounded by her own species. Maya was quiet for a long moment before answering. "No," she said finally. "Because if I had stayed on Earth, Pip would still be getting bullied. Those other students would still be harassing smaller species without consequences. The security forces would still be using excessive force on anyone they considered lesser. Sometimes someone has to be the catalyst for change, even if they did not ask for that role, even if it is hard." She smiled then, a small, genuine smile that looked nothing like the predator smile from Corridor 7. "Besides," she added, "I am scoring in the top 10% of my quantum mathematics class. Professor Keltrek says I have real aptitude for theoretical physics. I am not giving that up just because some people have not figured out that Deathworlders are people too." The interview went viral. Absolutely viral. Within a week, Maya Torres had become the face of a larger conversation about how civilized space treated species from harsh environment worlds, about prejudice and privilege and the assumptions everyone made about who deserved respect and who deserved authority. I watched that interview from my quarters while packing my belongings. Watched Maya speak with confidence and intelligence and grace. Watched her be everything I had assumed she was not, simply because of where she came from. And I understood finally what I had really lost that morning in Corridor 7. Not just my job, not just my reputation, but the chance to be someone worth respecting. The opportunity to be the kind of person who protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Maya Torres had given me that chance with her restraint. She could have hurt me, badly, easily. Instead, she had shown me exactly who I had been and given me the opportunity to become someone different. Whether I could actually become that person, well, that remained to be seen. But for the first time in 17 cycles, I was going to try. 3 weeks later, I found myself standing outside a community education center in the outer district of the station. Not Celestial Academy. Nowhere near that prestigious. This was where adults came to learn trades, to earn certifications to restart their lives after setbacks. The building was old, the crystalline walls dulled with age, the doorway much smaller than the grand entrance to the academy. My mandatory counseling sessions had been educational, uncomfortable, painful. The counselor of Thrrell, with way too much empathy for my comfort, had made me walk through every decision, every assumption, every moment where I had chosen power over compassion. "You are not irredeemable," she had said during our last session, "but you are also not entitled to redemption. That is something you will have to earn through actions, not words, through years of different choices, not grand gestures." So here I was, about to attend my first class in species cultural competency and inclusive leadership, a 6-month intensive program, mandatory for my probation. But also, I had realized somewhere around week 2 of counseling, necessary for my soul. The classroom was small, 15 students, all adults, all here for various reasons. A former corporate manager who had been fired for discriminatory hiring practices. A medical professional who had made dangerous assumptions about a patient's pain tolerance based on species stereotypes. A transit authority supervisor who had designed systems that were inaccessible to low-gravity species. We were all failures in our own ways. All people who had let prejudice and assumption guide our actions until the consequences caught up with us. The instructor was human. Of course she was human. Dr. Rachel Okonkwo, the same xenobiology professor who had testified during my review hearing. She looked at each of us with those evaluating brown eyes as we settled into our seats. "Welcome," she said simply. "I am not here to make you feel better about yourselves. I am not here to tell you that everyone makes mistakes or that you are victims of a flawed system. You are here because you made choices, bad choices, harmful choices, choices that hurt other sentient beings. Nobody argued. What would be the point? But, she continued, you are also here because you have the capacity to make different choices going forward. That is not guaranteed. Many people in your situations double down on their prejudices, blame their victims, convince themselves that they were right all along. The fact that you are in this room suggests you might be capable of actual growth. She pulled up a holographic display. Images of various species. Humans, Cravathi, Tesserans, Pelaxians, dozens of others. We are going to spend the next 6 months studying not just biology, but culture, history, psychology. You are going to learn why species develop the way they do, why their behaviors make sense in their contexts, why your assumptions about them were not just wrong but dangerous. The first image that appeared was of a young human girl, brown eyes, brown hair, slight build, a school uniform from Celestial Academy, Maya Torres. My forearms tensed involuntarily. I had not expected this, had not prepared myself to see her face again so soon. This is Maya, Dr. Okonkwo said. Some of you may recognize her from the news coverage. She is a student at Celestial Academy, 17 years old, from Earth. Category 9 Deathworld. She has become something of a symbol in recent weeks, but I want you to understand that she is a person, not a metaphor. She pulled up more images. Maya in various campus locations, always alone, always watchful. Maya came to the academy with high test scores and a work ethic that impressed her instructors. Dr. Okonkwo continued. She is particularly talented in mathematics and theoretical physics. She is also kind. She befriends students that others ignore. She intervenes when she sees injustice. She tries very hard to be a good person in an environment that has made that extremely difficult. Another image appeared. The security footage from Corridor 7, me blocking Maya's path. The moment of the slap, the transformation. I wanted to look away, forced myself not to. This incident could have ended very differently, Dr. Okonkwo said quietly. Human adrenaline response increases strength output by 40 to 50%. Reaction time decreases by half. Pain tolerance triples. Maya is young and not particularly large by human standards, but in that state she could have caused serious injury. She let that sink in for a moment. She chose not to. Despite every biological imperative screaming at her to eliminate the threat, despite being alone and afraid and hurt, she chose restraint over violence, control over instinct, and then afterward she chose mercy over vengeance when she argued against harsh criminal penalties for her attacker. Dr. Okonkwo looked directly at me. Everyone in the room followed her gaze. They knew. Of course they knew. My case had been all over the news too. Thrrell, she said, using my name without the rank I no longer possessed. Can you tell the class what you learned from this encounter? A month ago I would have resented the question, would have felt humiliated at being singled out. Now, after weeks of counseling and reflection and facing what I had actually done, I just felt tired and honest. I learned that I was afraid, I said slowly, not just in that moment when her eyes went black. Before that, always. I was afraid of anything different, anything I did not understand. So I used authority to control what I feared. I told myself it was about maintaining order, about discipline, about respect. But really it was just fear wearing a uniform. The classroom was completely silent. I was afraid of Maya because she was strong, I continued, because she survived on a world that would kill most of us in hours, because she had capabilities I did not understand and could not match. So I used my position to diminish her, to make her smaller, to convince myself that she was the threat, not me. My voice cracked slightly on that last part. I took a breath, steadied myself. But the real threat was my ignorance, my assumptions, my refusal to see her as a person instead of a category. And by the time I understood that, it was too late. I had already hurt her, already proven that everything she feared about how she would be treated in civilized space was correct. Dr. Okonkwo nodded slowly. And what will you do differently? Everything, I said simply. I will question my assumptions. I will educate myself. I will listen instead of commanding. I will protect instead of intimidating. I will earn trust instead of demanding obedience. I will try to be someone that a student like Maya could respect, even if I never work in security again, even if I never have authority again. I will try to be better than who I was. She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded again. That is a start. The rest of the class passed in a blur of information, cultural contexts for various species, biological imperatives, historical trauma and its impact on contemporary behavior. It was overwhelming and humbling and absolutely necessary. As we filed out afterward, Dr. Okonkwo stopped me. "Thrrell," she said, "a word please." I waited while the others left, my secondary heart rate increasing with nervousness. "Maya knows you are taking this course," she said quietly. "The Academy is required to inform her of your rehabilitation progress as part of her victims' rights." I had not thought about that, had not considered that Maya would be getting reports about my attempts to become a better person. "She asked me to give you something," Dr. Okonkwo continued. She pulled out a small data chip. "A message. You do not have to read it if you do not want to, but she wanted you to have the option." She handed me the chip and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the empty classroom. It took me 2 hours to work up the courage to load the message. When I finally did, it was text only. Brief. In Maya's precise, careful style of communication. "Guard Captain Thrrell," it read. "I have been informed that you are pursuing education in species competency and inclusive leadership. I appreciate that you are taking responsibility for your actions. I want you to know that I do not hate you. I was afraid of you, and I was angry at you, but I do not hate you. The hate takes too much energy, and I need that energy for my studies and for helping Pip recover from trauma. I hope your classes teach you what mine have been teaching me, that every species has value, that differences make us stronger, that fear is a choice and so is compassion. Good luck with your rehabilitation. Maybe someday we will meet again under better circumstances. Maya Torres, student, Celestial Academy." I read it 3 times, then a 4th. Then I saved it to my personal files where I could access it whenever my motivation flagged or my old assumptions tried to reassert themselves. Maya Torres had every right to hate me, to want me punished, to celebrate my downfall. Instead, she had offered understanding, hope, the possibility of redemption. She was 17 years old, from a death world. Everything civilized space had taught me to dismiss as primitive and savage, and she had more wisdom, more grace, more genuine civilization in her than I had managed in 43 years of life. The irony was not lost on me, neither was the lesson. I left the education center and walked through the outer district of the station, watching the crowds of various species moving about their lives. Kervathian humans and Tesserans and Pelaxians and dozens of others, all coexisting, all trying to make their way in a complicated galaxy. For the first time in my life I looked at them and saw people, not categories, not threats, not species to be managed or controlled or feared, just people, each with their own struggles and strengths and story. It was a start, a small one. But Dr. Okonkwo was right. That was enough. The rest would come with time, with effort, with thousands of small choices to be better than I had been. Somewhere across the station, Maya Torres was probably in class, learning quantum mathematics, protecting smaller students, being the kind of person that civilized space desperately needed more of. And somewhere in the same station I was taking my first steps toward becoming worthy of sharing that space with her. The human girl with the black eyes had taught me the most important lesson of my life. Not through her strength, though that had been impressive. Not through her rage, though that had been terrifying. But through her mercy, her restraint. Her choice to believe that even people who hurt her could learn to do better. I did not know if I would ever see her again. Did not know if I could ever actually become the person her message suggested I might be capable of becoming. But I was going to try, every single day. I was going to try, because anything less would be disrespecting the grace she had shown me, and after everything I had done, the least I owed Maya Torres was to not waste the second chance she had given me. The corridor stretched ahead, crystalline and bright and full of possibilities. I took a breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked forward into whatever came next. It was time to be better, time to do better, time to prove that even someone like me could learn, could change, could grow beyond their fear and prejudice and become something worth being. Maya had shown me it was possible. Now I just had to do the work.